Hi everyone, Jen here for Country Craft Creations, and I am going to show you how I created my trifold folio that was posted using the Gnome for Christmas by Echo Park. I have several people wanting a tutorial on how I made this. I even spoke to a few of you at the recent retreat in Utah regarding this. So as promised, I'm going to do a tutorial on the base of this and how I created and constructed the pages. Just a quick reminder of how this is done. It is a 6x6. And so you will need 3 pieces of 6x6 heavyweight chipboard for the base, as well as 2. Now, the original one, I did my 2 spines 1 inch by 6 inch. I'm going to try to do this one in 1.5 by 6, just so there's a little bit more play. And then we'll have our middle section here. And if you are wanting to do this the same way that I did, you will need either the Graphic 45, this is the tag pocket and butterfly dies, is what I used here, or something similar. The Heartfelt Creations tag dies will work probably just as well. They'd be a little bit wider, or anything you have similar to this that has this nice edge here will work. So let's get into the construction of this. Now I'm going to just show you how I constructed it from the lay flat method all the way on to adding the pages. And then I will just show you at the end how I will decorate this one. I'm going to make this one using the new exclusive Old World Christmas from Country Craft Creations. But I'm not going to go step by step with how to decorate it. I am just going to give you the measurements in a cut guide, and I will show you as I go. And then you can do this in any of the paper collections that you choose. So let's get started with the actual construction. So I have my 3 pieces of 6x6 chipboard and my 2 1.5 by 6s. Now these I have used a Xyron machine that runs through and does this backing for you, the sticky. If you don't have one of those, you can use score tape, you can use glue. I don't like to use glue because I feel like it ripples the paper a little, but if you have a great method for doing that, go for it. So let's get started here. I'm going to burnish all of these down really quickly just to make sure that all of the sticky stays when I peel these off. And then we'll do the spines a little bit differently. So what I have cut for you, let me just grab my guide that I started. This is done in the Craft 12 by 12 artisan cardstock. And I used 7 sheets for the base and the pages so far. So you have the 3 pieces to cover to do the lay flat method. You need 3 8x8s in the Craft cardstock. And then you need 2 pieces for the spines. These will measure, these are 4.5 by 8, okay? So let's go ahead and lay the spines down on here. I'm going to use my scoreboard as a guide, as well as my spacers. And I'm just going to go ahead and use glue for this portion. Or no, you know what? I think I'm actually going to go ahead and use score tape. I just need to find one wide enough in here. So this is a 5/8 inch score tape that I'm going to use on these. And I am just going to run it down my chipboard. I just like the way that score tape adheres a little bit better than using glue. I will run a little bead of glue down the middle just for that extra adherence. Hopefully everything's in the camera here. Let me move this up just a bit for you. I'll go ahead and put these on. All right. So now I have that portion done. I'm going to go ahead and add some glue to the middles there. And I just realized I don't have the tip on my glue. All right, so I'm going to put my 1.5 inch spacer on this side and a 1 inch spacer across the top here for my spines. And I got a little too much glue because I didn't have the tip on my glue. I didn't even realize when I was doing that I didn't have the tip on. So now that I've fixed that issue, I'm just going to peel off our score tape backing here of the first one. Line those spacers up. Make sure everything's in the camera there. And then I'm just going to go ahead and put that down there nice and flush. Okay, there's one. Just set that aside. Bring in your other piece and do the same. We're just going to want to put that 1 inch across the top and your 1.5 inch there. Peel off this backing. And slide that in there. All right, so now we have our spine pieces. I'm going to go ahead and get those burnished and drying. So let me throw away all this junk. Grab a score tool. I'm just going to bend mine all the way around first, just so that we have a nice bend that we can see. And then I'm just going to run my bone folder right down the side of this just to get that paper stretched over the chipboard. And like I said, I'm doing this in the lay flat method of Tamara's. This is my new favorite way of doing my albums. I do wrap sometimes, but this is just a great way to do these, especially these multi-piece with the trifold. It makes everything run a lot smoother. So what I'm going to do now is I am just going to add a little glue. So then we just sort of run it down the sides too, just a little bit. You don't need a lot on the sides. And then just run your glue here and pull that up and over. And then you just want to kind of run your bone folder down inside here and over. And you'll see that paper kind of try to resist, but you want to get that lined up really nicely with your chipboard. There is the point of this portion. Don't push too hard because you don't want to pop a hole in your paper. I'm going to do that on both ends. Just down that corner a little bit. You don't have to go all the way down the side. And you don't need a lot of glue for this portion. I'll do this side exactly the same, and then I'm going to do the other one. Okay, so now we have those done, and I'm just going to set them aside and let those dry, and we will do our 3 pieces. So here you have your 8x8. Fix my camera a little bit there. I'm not quite sure what happened with my camera. There we go. That's a little better. All right. So here we're going to use 2 1-inch spacers. If you have the spacers, if not, you can use something else to do your 1 inches. So we just want to put one here and one here. And I'm going to peel off my backing. So whatever method you used, go ahead and do that. All right, and I have one. Just going to flip that over and make sure I get a nice burnish on the sticky and fold. Set that one aside, and we will move on to the second one. Same thing, 1 inch at the top, 1 inch at the bottom. Whatever tool you're using to do that. I peel off my backing. One of the things I love about this Tamara's lay flat method is I find that once you really start doing it and you have done it quite a few times, it's very simple and quick. I mean, you can put a book together in such little time, and I love that I can do that. And our third one. Oops, this way. I have these marked so that the bend of my cardstock or chipboard has a way of bending, and I actually just learned this from a customer that posted in Scrapbookers, that it goes just like paper, so it bends easier this way than it does this way. So I'm trying this out. So she suggested that you use the stiffer portion from side to side and the more bendable from top to bottom. So we'll see. I've never had a problem with my books before not doing it this way, but it's something new and I wanted to try it. All right, so now we have that, and we will get these wrapped. And I will demonstrate one on camera just in case you are not overly familiar with Tamara's lay flat method. And then I will do the rest off camera and then show you how to put them together. So what I have here is my wrapped piece. This is the first one, and I'm just going to run score tape all the way around that outer edge of the chipboard on the inside here. Just all the way around. And I don't want to overlap my score tape, so I'm just going to run this little thing right up there. See, and then it's a nice line of score tape. And then you can run score tape on the inside if you choose. I'm actually going to use glue. So I'm going to burnish all this tape down nicely. And then I am going to bend my corners a little bit so that I can see them in order to miter those. Now, some people will cut the whole square out. I am just going to miter mine. So I'm going to take a larger scissors, and I'm going to go in, but not all the way to that corner. I want to leave about 1/8 of an inch. So I will cut right at that cross section, but leaving a little bit. Not terribly much, but it's easier to cut some off if you don't cut enough than to have your chipboard show. So we just want to go all the way around doing that mitering. And then I am going to peel off all of the backing from my score tape pieces. And then I'm going to add glue to my flaps. So run glue right up against your chipboard and then on your flaps. Okay, and I'm having a blowout here. And then you just want to pull your flap in nice and tightly. And run your bone folder down. Just get off any excess glue. And then flip it over and do the other side next. Don't do the top and bottom. We're going to do these side to side. I'm going to run some glue. And then, of course, all over my flap. And pull that to the side. And I just want to give that a nice burnish. And like I said, wipe off any excess glue. Now you will see that you have a little bit of extra here, and you just want to push that in with your bone folder. Make sure it goes nicely up against that chipboard and is pushed in so you don't have a little pooch, as I call it, in your chipboard, or excuse me, in your cardstock. Okay, and then you could go ahead and do these sides. So run your glue down this way and on your flap. Pull that in. Burnish that down nicely. And the last flap. And as you can see, by pushing those corners in, I don't have any excess hanging over. So I'm going to just take my bone folder now and run along the edges on the back side of my bone folder. This just gives you a nice, clean, straight edge on all of your sides. And I'm going to set that aside. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap my other two off camera, and I will be right back. All right, so back to the spine portion. Let's get those put back all the way together. So for these, you're going to turn these into what looks kind of like wings. You just want to go in with your scissors really cautiously and cut just a tiny little bit of a miter at each end of these. So very small amount. You don't want to cut too much. Just a really small amount so that these look like wings. And again, if you're familiar with Tamara's lay flat method, then you already know how to do this. But I just wanted to go through step by step on how I constructed my folio, or excuse me, my album. Because you can't really call it a folio because it is pretty big and has a lot of pockets and interactive portions. All right, now that I have those cut and they're nice and dry, I'm going to go ahead and take my bone folder and do the same thing, the back of it, just to kind of flatten that bottom of that spine out. And then we will get our scoreboard back out. And what we're going to do is turn it. This is what I use, same way that Michelle does it, as well as some others. So we're going to take our pieces, and we want these to line up like so. So this is my top bottom. I have this measured, or excuse me, marked. And I'm just going to set my little wing down on here and just kind of line this up so I can see where it's going to go. And then I'm going to add some score tape to the back of this, about, I would go a little over 1/8 over, almost 1/4 inch past here. You don't want it right up against there because then it might possibly show. So I'm just going to run my score tape along here. On both sides, leaving that little bit of space. I'm going to clip this because it's not very straight. Go ahead and do it the way that it's angled. I'm quite picky about my score tape placement. Not all of us are. And you don't have to be. I've been doing this for so long. But I want to make sure that you see every step of doing the construction of this album. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and burnish down all that tape nicely. And remember, this is the outside. So we're going to place this down. And I'm going to remove the score tape backing on these pieces on one side. And I'm going to take my first 6x6 wrapped piece, making sure that I have top bottom. And I am just going to hold this down in here, straight as you can get it. And then I'm going to push this up and almost to the edge of that spine. And it slipped a little. We want to make sure that it is lining up. And that slipped a little, so I'm going to redo that one, which can be done. It's not recommended. I'm going to do it from this side and see if I get a better adherence. There we go. Okay, and then just flip it over and burnish down your flap. All right, and then we're going to add the next piece. I'm just going to go ahead and remove the backing from this portion of score tape. And you can add glue to this too if you want it to be even more secure. I am not going to do that this time. Grab my next 6x6, make sure that I have my top bottom. All right, so that's this side. And then I want to do the same, but this is going to be upside down this time, just to make sure that they line up. And I am going to push that down and go ahead and burnish that piece. All right, so now as you can see, we have our first section done. All right, now we're going to move on to the second one of these. We're going to add our score tape. I'm just going to go ahead and burnish this a little nicer now that it's had a chance to dry. Probably should have done that on the other one. It's an added little step, but it ensures that your score tape is the proper distance away from your spine. Oops, ripped a little on the paper there. That was not intended. Should be using a tear tool for this, to be quite honest. That does not happen. No, it still happened. It's all right. We won't see that. Clip this off. I think this is the end of my roll of score tape here, so go ahead and place that down. And I'm going to do it this way because my tape is, and I am just about out. Hopefully that's enough. Should be a little bit too much actually, and I ripped it. Just not having a good go here today, I guess, with my score tape. It does not like me, so I'm just going to clip this off. And if you have any excess, do go in, trim it carefully. Don't trim your actual flaps. And I am going to go ahead and I'm going to add this third piece on. And we want to place this one on the end here. So we're going to go ahead, and you can do it on either end. I'm doing it on this end specifically because I did tear my paper a little bit when I redid that portion. So I just want to make sure that I cover that. As you can see, I have a little bit of a tear here. So I am going to place this, and I have this one upside down. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the score tape off of this side. I'm going to do this side first so that all of my markings are right side up on the other side so you can see them. All right, so my torn side is here. Yes. And we're just going to go ahead and add that piece in up to the edge. There we go. And there is that piece. Burnish roll my tape down. And lastly, we will slide this piece in as well. So this is going to go in this way. Slide your book down your scoreboard so that you have plenty of room. And then we're just going to slip this one right in there, like so. Okay. So now you have, as you can see, a trifold folio. Neat, huh? So next we're going to cover the inside paper. So now we're going to take an 1/8 sheet of the 12 by 12 Craft Artisan, and I am going to cut this to 5 7/8. And I am going to leave it at 12. Okay, so you can see this is going to go inside here. We're going to put this together at about 1/2 inch. So I want to measure about where I want to cut the next piece. So I'm going to go in 1/2 inch, and then I want to line up at 9 3/4. So to do that, instead of the whole 12-inch piece, we're going to have a 9 3/4 inch piece that we're going to cut. So I'm going to do that 5 7/8 again. Just going to pull a 1/4 inch off of our paper there. And then I want 9 3/4. So I'm just going to go over to 9 3/4. I'm going to cut that off, okay? And then we are just going to line this up at 1/2 inch and put it together. So I'm going to grab some 1/2 inch score tape. It's the easiest way to ensure that you get that 1/2 inch. And I am just going to run it down my paper. And there's my tear tool. Whoops, well that didn't tear right now, did it? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Okay, and then I have a little extra here and I just want to clip that off. I don't want any extra. So then just burnish out that score tape, peel off your backing, and then adhere this extension onto this. And just use the edge of your score tape that you put down as a guide. And then we're going to bring in our book, lay this across just to make sure that it's going to fit nicely on here, and it does. And it could actually be 5 3/4 if you wanted to, but I'm going to stick with the 5 7/8, and I'm going to watch where this is going to end up. We want to just make sure when you lay this down, if you turn it one way, your score will end up right on one of your flaps, and I would prefer that it doesn't do that. I would rather not have that bulk, so I'm going to put it here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use score tape and glue to do this portion. I actually might just use score tape on the edges. So I'm going to go ahead, put some score tape on my edges. I'm just going to run this all the way around the outside edge of this piece. And you could cover the whole thing if you wanted to. I'm going to use glue in the middle. This is just to help adhere the paper down. And I don't want to use glue for all of it, but I also don't want to use score tape for all of it. So this is just my way of doing it. You can do it also with a Xyron machine if you wanted to just do it that way. Or score tape sheets work as well. This is just the method that I like. All right, so now I have all that score tape down. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to burnish out all that score tape. Just get a good stick. Okay. And I'm going to start from one side. And I will add glue as I go so that it does not have a problem sticking. So I'm going to just take off this first portion and I'm going to pull this back and fold, and I will pull it out once I get this nicely lined up. So do that on both sides, as you can see here. I folded and did that. Now I'm going to take my glue and add it to that first part. And you can add your glue completely at this point. Just don't peel all of your score tape off just yet. We want to hold off on the score tape. Just keep it bent back. Let's see, I missed a little spot there, so I just go ahead. Make sure you have plenty of glue in there. And then we're just going to take our sheet and not try to stick your fingers in all the glue like I just did. And I'm going to turn this way so that I can see clearly what I'm doing. And I'm going to line this up, leaving about 1/8 of an inch around the edge. And yes, okay, pull this up and line it up all the way down. Okay. And then you can pull this score tape out and go ahead and peel off this piece as well at the end. And just make sure that you are lining up your paper all the way around. All right. Okay. And now we just want to go in and burnish all that tape and glue down with a nice large smoothing tool. Don't worry about your score lines just yet. Get your glue and your tape nicely burnished. And then you can start to bend your book at the score lines. And then open it up and we will burnish those out even further. And for some reason my glue is not sticking on this side here, but I'm going to go ahead and go in and re-score those score lines a little bit at our bends. I feel like I need a little glue under here. It's just not sticking. Again, do this gently so that you don't pop a hole through your score lines. Nobody wants a hole in their book. And you can pull up on your, as you do this, do the folding. just to make sure that everything works as you're doing this. All right, so now as you can see, we have the base. Next, we will make the page systems that go inside. All right, so now we have our fun little folio base done. We will move on to the pages. So this will be the beginning of this section here, and we will add all these fun little flaps to this front portion. And then we will also do the base portion of this, which requires 2 sheets of paper. And this is done in a stacking method. So for this, you need 2 sheets of 5 3/4 tall by 12 and 1 sheet at 5 3/4 tall by 11 3/4. So the 5 3/4 by 12 sheet is our first one. We're going to score at 5 3/4 and we're going to score at 6 1/4. Burnish down your pages nicely, your creases, so that you get a nice straight lined up kind of booklet like so. That's going to be our front section. Then you're going to do the exact same thing with the other 5 3/4 tall by 12, 5 3/4 and 6 1/4, and we're going to burnish that down. Now the 11 3/4 inch long by 5 3/4 tall piece, which actually looks a little bit taller. I'm not quite sure what happened there. No, it's on there. Okay. So for this one, you want to score, again, 5 3/4, and then we're going to score at 6, and that's going to give us a 1/4 inch in the middle of those two 5 3/4, okay? So let's just make sure our fold lines are good. All right, now pull in one of your other ones with the 1/2 inch score line. So this is one of your 12 inch sheets. And then I'm just gonna run a bead of glue. I like to use glue for this so it sticks nicely. I'm gonna run a small bead of glue right down that 1/4 inch scored section. Okay, just like so. Then you wanna put this on your scoreboard and position this so that your lines, your score lines on the 1/4 inch fold land on the 7/8 and the 1/8 mark on either side of the 6. Okay. Make sure everything is nicely lined up and just burnish down that glue in the middle. Okay, wipe off any excess, and we want to turn this, but this is not sticking. Interesting. Let's try that again. Sorry for that. Not quite sure why my glue decided it did not want to stick. Again, I'm going to position this right at either side of that 6 inch. So we want one line of our score on the 7/8 mark before the 6 and one on the 1/8 mark after the 6. Okay. And it looks like what happened here is I may have cut this paper a little off. So I am going to take this and I'm going to fix that really quick. Just going to grab a cutter, and I can see that this side is perfectly lined up, but this side is a little off. So when I put it in my cutter the first time, I must have just positioned it just off kilter. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that with my cutter. And if it would cut, I would fix it. Let's see here. I'm going to try my other cutter really quick here. I'll just pull this bad boy in here and go back. And we are just going to trim off that excess with it cut with it together. And that's one way to make sure that your pages are all exactly the same. They're lining up. You can go in and trim a little. As you can see, it just shaved off this tiny little bit, almost a string. So once that glue has dried well enough, I am going to flip my page here And I'm going to line it all up and burnish that line down. And that gives you about 1/8 of an inch of space right here in between. And then you have a 1/4 in the middle. So if you're going to put anything bulky in here, you want to make sure that it goes in your middle. Okay. Now I'm just going to make sure all of that lines up. Beautiful. Now you see you have this fun little booklet, and that is our second page system. All right. So now let's work on the fun little flaps and such that go to this section. What we're going to do, so for this first section here, which is the flip open, we have a piece that measures, and you can do this in any size you want. If you want it to cover the whole page, you could do that. If you want it to be smaller, you can do that as well. So what I did is 4 3/4, and then it is, well, if I can get my ruler to line up, 6. So 6 inches by 4 3/4. I should have that piece cut over here. I just need to find it. I think it's this one here. Maybe. Oh, here they are. I'm losing it today. All right, so we should have a 4 3/4 by 6. Here it is. Okay, so that 4 3/4 by 6, you want to put on your scoreboard at the 6 across the top and score it 1/2 of an inch. Okay, because that's going to be your flap that attaches it to your page. Burnish that down nicely, and you can choose to miter or not miter this. I am not going to miter it for the sake of video right now. And just keep in mind that this is 5 3/4. This is 4 3/4. So you want 1/2 of an inch on either side. So if you line this up on your scoreboard before you place it, if you put it on the 1/2 inch mark and the 5 1/4 inch mark, you're going to have exactly 1/2 of an inch on either side. So let's go ahead and put that down. And you can also do this with score tape. I am just going to use my glue. And put a nice amount of glue there. And then I'm going to open mine up. And I'm going to position it at 4 just so that I can see that it's nice and straight. I'm going to go to that 4 1/2 inch mark and over to the 9 1/4 inch mark on my scoreboard. And I am going to look and just make sure that we're not overlapping, and I'm not. And then I can burnish that glue down, and we have a nice straight edge. Open that up and go ahead and burnish that down as well. Okay, so now we have our first little flap here. The second portion of this flap is going to be, as you see here, this is a kind of a tag system. So what we need to do here, and I will show you, is we have to cut out a piece that measures, uses a die. Now you could do this in a square if you don't have a die, but I'm going to grab a die and be right back. Okay, so my original, the Gnome for Christmas album that I did, I used a graphic 45 die for this, but I would like to try a different die. I'm going to use, and this one is actually available at Country Craft Creations. So I'm going to try this Heartfelt Album Tags and Accents die, and I'm going to grab this guy here, which is the larger, the biggest one in here. So you get several different dies in here. There's one actually still in the package. And you could use this skinnier one if you chose to. I'm not, because I need to use that for paper. So I'm going to take this. So our piece here will be a little bit wider than the original, but not too much. Actually, you know what? It doesn't need to be wider. We're just going to use the piece of paper I already cut, which is the Craft, and it is 4 inches by 8 inches, okay? And how you want to do this is you want to slip your paper through the die, okay, like so. We want to make sure that this goes all the way to the top and that you're as even as you can get. Okay, so here's what I decided to do with that, because I do want to try this Heartfelt Creations die. The die that I used for the original was this one here. It is the Tag and Pocket and Butterfly die set from Graphic 45, but we want to use this one. So we're going to do this. I cut this paper down. So now it's 3 7/8 by 8, and we should be able to slip our paper through here now. Yes, it's perfect. So what you want to do is you just want to make sure that this goes all the way to the top and that the cutting portion of the die is not cutting into the sides of the paper. Okay? And then I'm just going to grab a piece of washi tape from off to the side here. It looks like it's Halloween, which is fitting right now. Get this as even as you possibly can. And then just go ahead and put that piece of washi tape on. Turn your piece over to make sure you're only cutting up to the top. You don't want those blades on the side of that die to cut into anything else, okay? So this is what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to grab my manual Sizzix for the sake of video. And I am going to try to get this in camera. All right. I need new plates, it looks like. Let's go ahead and turn that one over. So I'm just going to place this on here like so. Again, making sure that those cutting blades don't cut into the sides because we want to keep the integrity of the 3 7/8 size, but we just want to get that scalloped edge. And if you have a scalloped edge die, you could do that as well. Those would work just as well. So we only need to run this right through where that is going to cut. And I'm going to pass it through just a couple times. And I will show you what we will get. Let me get this score tape off of here. And there you go. So we're going to have a little bit different design than my original, but the same basic concept. And like I said, you can use an edger die. If you have these Tag and Pocket dies, you can do those as well from Heartfelt Creations. They are available at Country Craft Creations at the store and most likely online as well. Let me just put my machine away here real quick. And we will finish this piece up. So now what you want to do for this, as you can see, we have it scored. So what we need to do is we need to measure. I'm going to measure this really quickly. And I had done this at 3.5. So we're going to go in and we're going to score the end of this. So you have it like so. We want to score this at 3.5. Okay. And that seems kind of short to me. Let me see here why that seems short. Oh, because this goes over. Okay. So 3.5. Go ahead and fold that over because you're going to want to take a corner rounder at this point. I'm going to grab my little We Are Memory Keepers one here, and I'm just going to go in with the 7mm, or excuse me, the 4mm, and I'm going to clip off those corners on the flat edge side. And that will line up a lot better. So see, now as you can see, we're going to have the same basic concept, but this scalloped edge is a little bit different, okay? Now what we want to do is we want to take a scrap piece of cardstock in craft. I am going to cut this down to 1 inch really quick on my small little cutter. And we know that we have 3 7/8. So go ahead and cut a 3 7/8. If I can get this as a newer small cutter. And it's very hard to see because they don't have the numbers in color. So we want to do 3 7/8 by 1 inch. Okay. And this can be any scrap of your craft cardstock that you have left over, but use craft if you are able because we want everything to match nicely. So there is our 1 inch by 3 7/8 inch piece. Okay. Now we're going to place that on the scoreboard and we're going to score it down the middle at half. This is going to become a gusset for that pocket or that flap. So we're going to cut that like that, or excuse me, burnish that down. And then you want to miter these corners. So we're going to miter this way on both sides from the corner in. And that's going to give you a piece that looks like this. Okay. So now what I'm going to do, this is our front and this is our back. So what I want to do now is I want to glue this piece to the back portion of this. All right, so I am going to put this on my scoreboard, again, using that to line myself up nicely. And I am going to add glue to the back of that little flap. And I'm going to put that right corner to corner up to that line. Okay. Double check and make sure nothing is overlapping. You don't want any overlapping going on. Go ahead and burnish all that glue down, both inside and on top. Okay. And now as you can see, we have this fun little flap and this still opens up. And that's how we're going to make this. Now we will add magnets to this as well. And this is going to become this fun little flap. And this will go on the flap side. So next you will take your little page where we added this top flap, okay, and just go ahead and line this up. So our top flap is, I do believe 4 3/4, but no, 5, it's 5 1/2, okay? So half of 5 1/2 is 2 3/4. So if you take this, you could use your scoreboard, but what I'm going to do is I am just simply going to go in with a pencil. I'm going to go to 2 3/4. So 5 1/2, 2 3/4 would be here. So that's going to be my center. Okay. If I had a pencil handy, I'm going to use white. So here is our center mark of that flap, right? Then I'm just going to line that center mark up on my 6 and kind of figure out where. So if we have 5 1/2 here, I want to have the same amount on both sides, or pretty close. So I'm going to line this up and just glue it down, okay? And you can do it any way you like. You don't have to do it exactly like I'm doing. And I like to use a white pencil, but you're going to cover this with paper. Keep that in mind. So that is also okay. And it may not go directly in the middle of the page doing it this way. It's just one way that I do it. I'm not a perfectionist completely when it comes to lining up everything. So again, I'm going to use my scoreboard just to make sure that this goes right at the edge. And I'm going to look, and it does. And so this makes sure that all of your little flaps are hidden. Okay, that's the main point of doing this way. So see, now you can see this opens and it opens again. All right, and this will have a magnet, so don't worry about the fact that it's very floppy right now, because your magnet will take care of that. All right, so there's that portion. We have this portion done, and we have to add one more. So this one, this side flap is going to be 4 1/2 by, I believe, 4 3/4, but I cut a piece of paper for it. We'll see. It's over here. We want 4 1/2. Here it is. So 4 1/2 by 4 3/4. Yes. So on the 4 1/2 side, go ahead and, so you have your 4 1/2 at the top. We are just going to score it 1/2 inch. Okay. And again, you can miter this if you choose to. I am not going to miter this one. And this is going to go on this side of our flap. So you kind of want to eyeball this and line this up so that you get, it's about a little more than 1/4 of an inch on each side. Excuse me, on it when you're doing it sideways, it's on the side. So just kind of close up your book and look to see. Now I want this down just a little bit more. And you can put it on the page any way you like. I'm trying to line mine up. So once you get that centered where you want it, I'm just going to add some glue to the back of that flap. Again, you can miter your corners if you so choose. I don't miter for everything. So keep in mind that you have 4.5 inches here and you have 5.5 here. So that being said, if you put this at 1/2 inch somewhere, so put your piece on 2, put this at 1/2 inch, which is 2.5 on my board. And I should get pretty darn close to being perfect. Okay, let's see how that all folds up. Yep, all right. So then you just want to burnish all that glue down, inside and out. And there is our flippity flap system for that first page. Okay, this is all one page system. So now all we have to do is put these in our base. So I'm going to grab my base, the one that we recently created. Now keep in mind, my original that I did in the gnome for Christmas, I did 1-inch spines. This one I did 1.5 inch just because I wanted a little bit more play in the way that it moves. You can stick to the 1 inch or you can do the 1.5. The difference being, I'm not sure that it'll be any different when I do it, but my idea is that when I close this right now, the way this closes, it has to be closed like so in order for our magnets and our closure to close properly. If you try to stack them this way, as you can see, it does not close. So having that little extra space, I think, is going to make a difference. So we are going to try it and see. I mean, it works this way as well, and you can do it this way. But I kind of wanted to try and see if 1.5 inches would make a difference. So go ahead and pull this in, and you have your first spine here. And remember that you have 1/2 inch, and we have 1.5 inches here. Okay, so we're going to go over 1/2 inch. Make a mark. I'm going to do it this way. So here's 1/2 inch. And here's 1 inch, and that's going to make it so we have, and you can do 3, that would also work. So we're going to do 1/2 inch, 1 inch, go down, and we will do 1/2 inch and 1 inch. Okay, so see, you can see I made those little tick marks so that I used 1/2 inch in the middle of the page. And now we're going to use score tape for this page. I'm going to add glue to it, but for starting, I want to use score tape. So I'm going to grab some score tape, and I'm going to place it right down that middle of that 1/2 inch scored space. Oh, I'm not in camera. Let's see here. So as you can see, I'm just going to go down the middle because I'm going to put glue on the outer edges. Rip that off. And then I will burnish down all of that tape. Get a nice good stick. And I'm going to add a little bit of glue to this. 1, it'll help it if I have to move it, and 2, it's just added strength. So with this folded like so, and you've got your 1/2 inch, we want to put that right on those lines that we made. So we want to make sure we're at 1/2 inch all the way down. And you leave about, it's about 1/8 inch on the top and 1/8 inch on the bottom. So I want to make sure I am even here. All right, I'm just going to push that down. Go over to the other side. And now if we want to add things, we can because of all that extra space in there, okay? So that's the first section done. The second section is going to be the piece that we did the 2. So you will have your little booklet that has the 4 pages. We're going to do the exact same thing, okay? We're going to add some score tape to this, right down that middle. Burnish that down. Add a little bit of glue. Bring in your book so you have your other side. And I'm lining my first score line at 6. And I'm going to go over to that 6.5. There we go. Oh, that's a little off at the bottom. So let's pull that in just a bit. All right. Okay, there we go. So now you have your second page system inside. Now let's test this theory. It's obviously not full of stuff yet, so I think we're going to have a lot more play when we do this. It may be exactly the same, and I may not have needed 1.5 inch, but at least I tried. So that is the base of the album. You can decorate this any way that you choose. I will show you a couple little things inside of here. So where we put magnets and such. When you decorate this album, you're going to want to put a magnet under your first. So you have this piece here. You're going to want a magnet here. Okay. And then you're going to also want, oh, wait a second here. Why do I have a magnet there? Oh, your other magnet is underneath here. Okay. So it's under your pocket and such that's decorated on the inside. So it'll clasp there. Okay. So that's one magnet. Then you're also going to, on this section, you're going to want to put a magnet inside of here. And the second magnet for that one, let me just get this all open here, is inside of this piece here. So it's under your first flap's top paper. And you'll line that up so that this goes here. Okay. Then there is also, I'm trying to remember where all my magnets are. So that is that magnet. Okay. And then I think there is one more section we need to do. So we're going to add this flap on, and this will also have a magnet here and a magnet here. Okay. So this is just going to be an extra 5 3/4 by 6 1/4 page that we're going to score at half. All right. So let's do that really quick. This is my 5 3/4 by 6 1/4, and I'm going to go in at 5 3/4 here and score on this side. Okay. And this one you're going to want a miter just because it is a page. And I am just going to get that nicely burnished. Go into my book. And that is this page here that will open. All right. So we are going to open this book completely up. see where we're at. Okay. And I'm going to add glue to that flap. You can also do this with score tape. I just prefer glue. It sticks for a longer time. And I just want to line this up. So I'm going to pick up the page because it's craft on craft and I want to make sure that everything lines up good. I am just going to pick up my page, line that up with the bottom and top, and burnish it down. Okay, and again, when we decorate this page, we will have magnets on this, okay? And you can actually go in just a little bit just to make sure and then push it over and redo your score line there because we don't want to run into it sticking to our spine. So it's a little tiny bit shorter than 5 3/4 when you do it that way. Okay, and it just makes it move easier. So that is the base. And I will show you how I place my magnets and everything once I cut. Again, I am going to be doing this one in the Old World Christmas from Country Craft Creations. It's an exclusive. And I will be back with that. Okay, so I'm going to put my base paper down on the inside portion, excuse me, here so that I can show you the magnet, as well as here. So I'm just using the red and green from my stash. So you will need red and green paper if you're using this paper, or you can use anything you like. There is paper in the collection that I'm going to be using that I could use as well, but I have these pieces, so I'm going to go ahead and use these. I'm going to do green on this front portion. So our front piece here, when we open, okay, this is where our pocket is going to lay down, and I'm going to put this green piece of paper that measures 5 7/8 by 5 7/8 right here. And that way I can place my magnet underneath of here, okay? And for this magnet system, for the closure of the main part, I'm using large magnets. So these are the basic grays available at Country Craft Creations. And they are going to be the large set is what I'm going to use, okay? So I want to go in. This one I did. I'm just going to go ahead and look at my other one. I went in the middle of my magnet about 1 inch from the paper. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take one of my magnets sides and pull this off. And I'm just going to place it somewhere on here so that I know that my paper will cover right around, that's probably too far, probably right about there. And then I'm going to put this one on that one and peel that backing off. Make sure that this is going to close nicely, just like so. And then we'll pull it open like this. Now remember, we're also going to have a ribbon so that you have extra thickness on your closing. So you'll be able to close it a little bit better. That did not stick, so I need to get that to stick down. There we go. So that leaves you with your magnet on this side and your magnet on this side, and then you can cover it with your paper. Again, this lining will be 5 7/8 by 5 7/8, as well as this one, which will be red for me. And it is also 5 7/8 by 5 7/8. And that's going to go just like so. Okay. So whatever you're using, you can do that portion. Now, the magnet system that is back here for this little flap is just going to be a small magnet. So your small basic grays, we need a plus and a minus of those. They like to jump out of the package at me. So we're just going to take the backing off of there. And again, I want to place this right around the middle, but in enough that when I put paper on here, it's going to be able to cover it. So I'm just going to go right about here. Whoops, I did that backwards. I need to add score tape because I actually put that on there backwards. I do that sometimes. So I'm just going to grab a tiny little piece of score tape here and put it on the back of this, just so I can find my magnet again. When I go to put it on the other side, I want to make sure that it sticks over here, not to this page. So I'm just going to pull this off. And I am going to flip this closed and burnish that down, and then that magnet will stay, okay? And then I'm just going to cover that because for some reason my brain didn't work and I put it on there upside down. So I'm just going to go ahead and cover my magnet with another piece of that score tape, and we'll peel that off when we decorate. So for this one here, we are going to place a magnet on the inside of this flap. These again are the small magnets. So go ahead and grab another plus and minus in your small basic grays. You can use the large ones if you choose, if that's what you have. And I'm not going to do this one upside down this time. I'm going to go ahead and put them together and undo one side, and we're just going to go right around the bottom portion of that, okay? And then the other one goes on this flap. So on this flap here. So go ahead and peel off your backing of that minus. It's being hard. Doesn't want to come off of there. Okay, so then you have that. Now you're going to pull this over and burnish it down and flip it open. And you should have a magnet here and a magnet here. Okay, so that is where our magnets go. Now, I did not put a magnet on this here, but you could. You could add a magnet here if you want this to have a better, but this stays closed pretty well without having a magnet. And one of the things that I liked about putting the magnet, rather than just placing it on the back side of this, is because you can actually open this like so, and you can magnet it that way as well. And I liked that option. And we still have really good play in this. Yes, this will flap a little. And like I said, if you want to add a little magnet, I would suggest either doing it right directly in the middle to here, or you can do it on the corner and it will still close. Okay, so that is the magnets. So as said before, you can decorate this in whichever paper you choose. I am going to decorate mine. And this again is that where I slipped that through so that I could get a piece of seam binding in there to go ahead and tie this portion shut. And it gives you that nice little bow on the edge. And then we just want to close this one. For this one, I have to close it this way. Again, like I said, this is why I did the 1.5 inch spines on the new one that I just showed you. Like I said, it will work with 1 inch if you like it closing that way, and I'm not sure it's going to make a difference until I get mine completely decorated. But that's what we have. Now, the front cover of this, if you want to do it the same as this one, this is a wrapped piece of chipboard as a base for one of the cut-aparts. And, excuse me, it is 3.5 by 4.5. And then I took a piece of the paper that was 3.25 by 4.25, placed it on the back, and then I added another piece of one of the 3x4 cut-aparts. And that's how I did that. This one's going to have a shaker the same size as that I have made using chipboard. And that's going to be the difference with this album. So there you have it. That is how you make this folio. And I'm going to decorate mine and I will show you when it's done. Thanks for joining me.